Imagine waking up on a luxury cruise ship, the kind with endless food, nightly parties, and postcard-perfect views of the Caribbean. You're surrounded by family, celebrating life, love, and a much-needed break from reality. That was the mood in March 1998 for Amy Lynn Bradley and her family, until everything changed. Amy was 23, bright, athletic, newly graduated, and about to start a new job. She was the kind of person who lit up a room, outgoing, confident, with a wicked sense of humor. The night before she vanished, she was dancing with friends, laughing with her brother, enjoying the final nights of the cruise. But when the sun rose on March 24th, Amy was gone. Not a note, not a scream, not a single clue at first. Her father had seen her just an hour earlier, dozing peacefully on a lounge chair outside their cabin. But when he woke again, she'd vanished, along with her cigarettes and lighter. The ship was moments from docking in Curaçao. And just like that, Amy Lynn Bradley was missing. What followed wasn't just a search, it became a nightmare. The cruise ship hesitated to make an announcement. Crucial time was lost. And when the authorities finally got involved, strange details started to surface. Sightings of Amy on beaches, in brothels, in distress. A U.S. Navy officer said she begged him for help. A diver swore she tried to signal him. A scammer posed as a Navy SEAL and conned her desperate parents out of over $200,000 with false promises of a rescue. There were whispers of human trafficking. Photographs of a woman looking eerily like Amy surfaced online, looking hollowed out and afraid. And all the while, her family never stopped searching or hoping. To this day, no one knows for sure what happened aboard the Rhapsody of the Seas. But one thing is certain, Amy didn't just vanish. Someone knows something, and her story deserves to be told in full. So buckle in. This isn't just the case of a missing person. This is a haunting mystery with chilling twists, heartbreaking turns, and a question that still echoes across the ocean over 2 decades later. Where is Amy Lynn Bradley? Amy Lynn Bradley, born May 12, 1974, was just 23 years old when she vanished without a trace during a Caribbean cruise aboard the Rhapsody of the Seas, a luxury ship operated by Royal Caribbean International. It was late March 1998, and the ship was sailing toward the island of Curaçao. Amy had just graduated from Longwood University and was days away from starting a new chapter of her life. Instead, she disappeared, and her whereabouts remain one of the most unsettling mysteries in modern cruise history. On the early morning of March 24th, Amy was seen returning to her family's cabin at 3:40 a.m. She'd been out late, dancing and soaking in the last moments of vacation. Around 5:30 a.m., her father, Ron, briefly woke up and saw Amy sleeping peacefully on a deck chair outside their suite. But when he got up again just 30 minutes later, she was gone. No signs of a struggle, no loud noises, just gone. As panic set in, the family begged the cruise staff to make an announcement and stop passengers from leaving the ship. But by the time anything was done, most guests had already disembarked. The Netherlands Antilles Coast Guard launched a massive 4-day search, scanning the waters and surrounding ports, but they found nothing. That's when some officials floated a theory. Maybe Amy fell overboard and drowned. But her family didn't buy it, and they weren't alone. In the months and years that followed, people across the Caribbean reported seeing a woman who looked just like Amy, in places no one wanted to imagine. In August 1998, a couple on vacation said they spotted her on a Curaçao beach, looking out of place and uneasy. Then, in 1999, a U.S. Navy officer claimed he saw a woman in a brothel who begged him for help and said her name was Amy Bradley. Over time, disturbing new leads surfaced, from eerie photographs to sightings that hinted she may have been sold into human trafficking. Her story gained attention on major platforms like Dr. Phil and America's Most Wanted, turning her case into a haunting, real-life mystery that refuses to fade. And in July 2025, nearly 3 decades after she vanished, Netflix released a gripping 3-part documentary titled Amy Bradley is Missing: reigniting questions that have never been answered. Amy was born on May 12, 1974, in Petersburg, Virginia, to Iva and Ronald "Ron" Bradley, an insurance executive. She had a younger brother, Brad. Bradley grew up in Chesterfield County, Virginia, where she lived an all-American life, smart, athletic, and full of personality. She went on to attend Longwood University, where she earned her degree in sports psychology. Thanks to her basketball skills, she landed a scholarship and quickly made a name for herself, not just on the court, but also for her strong swimming abilities. In fact, she even worked as a lifeguard. While in college, Bradley came out as gay to her family, a personal decision that wasn't easy. According to her ex-girlfriend, her parents were disappointed at first and didn't exactly take the news well. But her father later said, "It's Amy's life. It wasn't what we would choose for her, but it's her life, and we loved her unconditionally." Ron won an all-expenses-paid family cruise from his job, and as a fun way to celebrate, Amy decided to tag along with the family aboard the Rhapsody of the Seas, a Royal Caribbean International cruise ship heading for Curaçao, a stunning Dutch Caribbean island. Amy wasn't exactly thrilled about the ocean at first. She had a fear of heights and felt uneasy about being on such a massive ship out at sea. But with her brother Brad home from college and everyone together, she got excited for the trip. At the time, Amy was working full-time at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, but she had something bigger lined up, a new job at a computer consulting firm, waiting for her right after the cruise. On March 21st, 1998, Amy and her family boarded the ship and set sail toward Curaçao. 2 nights later, on March 23rd, Amy and Brad stayed up late to enjoy the ship's nightlife, dancing, having a few drinks, and hanging out with the house band, Blue Orchid, at a disco party on the 9th floor deck. One of the band members, Alistair "Yellow" Douglas, had been drinking and dancing with Amy that night. He later claimed he left the party around 1 a.m. Interestingly, a videographer named Chris Fenwick caught a clip of Amy and Douglas dancing together, a moment that would later become important. After a couple of hours of partying, Brad called it a night and headed back to the family cabin. The ship's keycard system logged his return at 3:35 a.m., with Amy following just 5 minutes later. Brad later said they sat on the balcony for a bit, chatting, before he went to sleep. Amy stayed up a little longer and then eventually dozed off. Everything seemed perfectly normal, until it wasn't. Between 5:15 a.m. and 5:30 a.m. on March 24th, Ron woke up and stepped out to check on his kids. He spotted Amy still lying on the lounge chair out on their cabin's balcony. Everything seemed normal. "I could see Amy's legs from her hips down," he later told reporters. "I dozed back off to sleep. The balcony door was closed because if it hadn't been closed, I would have gotten up and closed it." But here's where things get murky. Some reports suggest that the balcony door may have actually been open. When Ron got up again around 6 a.m., Amy was gone. No sign of her, just her cigarettes and lighter missing. He said, "I left to try and go up and find her. When I couldn't find her, I didn't really know what to think, because it was very much unlike Amy to leave and not tell us where she was going." After searching the ship's common areas with no luck, Ron woke the rest of the family at 6:30 a.m. to break the terrifying news: Amy was missing. On the morning of the disappearance, 3 witnesses came forward claiming they'd seen Amy on the upper deck with Alistair Douglas, the band member she was seen dancing with the night before, sometime between 5:30 a.m. and 5:45 a.m. They said she had a camera with her, and that Douglas handed her a drink with some kind of dark liquid inside. According to the witnesses, Amy and Douglas entered the elevator together, but only Douglas was seen exiting the upper deck a little after 6 a.m. alone. Bradley's family wasted no time. The moment they realized she was missing, they alerted the cruise staff and begged them to stop the 2,000 passengers from leaving the ship. They pleaded for an announcement to be made, anything to help find Amy. But the purser's office told them it was too early for a ship-wide alert. Instead, the crew waited until 7:50 a.m., long after most people had already disembarked, to finally announce, "Will Amy Bradley please come to the purser's desk?" By the time the ship staff did a search between 12:15 p.m. and 1 p.m., Amy was nowhere to be found. That delay, many believe, cost them their best shot at finding her. The crew's hesitation, ignoring the family's urgent requests, may have closed the window on a critical early search. Brad remembered something strange. Not long after Amy disappeared, Alistair Douglas, the band member she was seen with the night before, approached him and said, "Hey man, I'm sorry to hear about your sister. But here's the weird part. There hadn't been any official announcement yet." Brad later said the timing felt suspicious. The FBI got involved quickly and interviewed Douglas, who agreed to take a polygraph, which he passed. Still, Ron wasn't convinced. He remembered Douglas walking out of the interview room grinning, flashing a thumbs up to his bandmates like, "Everything's cool." Ron said, "I knew what was going on. I knew he had been with Amy." Douglas, for his part, denied knowing anything about her disappearance. The Dutch Caribbean Coast Guard kicked off a 4-day search that wrapped up on March 27th. They brought in helicopters and even a radar-equipped plane, scanning the waters and nearby coastlines. Royal Caribbean also chartered a separate boat to assist in the search. But still, no sign of Amy. At first, authorities leaned toward a tragic theory. Maybe Amy had fallen overboard, or possibly taken her own life. But that didn't sit right with anyone who knew her. And according to investigators, there was no evidence that Amy, a trained lifeguard, fell overboard, was pushed, or committed suicide. The mystery only deepened. 1 month after Bradley's disappearance, her family flew down to Curacao, hoping for answers. While there, they were approached by a local cab driver who claimed he'd seen Amy the day the ship docked, March 24th. According to him, she was running through a parking lot, looking desperate and trying to find a phone. He said her green eyes stood out, the same striking detail listed on her reward poster. The driver even claimed he'd spotted her at other locations around the island. But his story had some holes, like the fact he never mentioned she was barefoot. In the end, authorities couldn't verify anything he said, and the lead went cold. In August 1998, another potential sighting surfaced, this one from 2 Canadian scuba divers at Playa Porto Marie, a popular beach in Curacao. One of them, David Carmichael, said he saw a woman who looked just like Amy, and she wasn't alone. She was with 2 men who gave off a threatening vibe. One of them reportedly looked a lot like Alistair Douglas, the band member from the cruise. Carmichael said he called out to his buddy about some dive gear, and when the woman heard him speaking English, she quickly turned and started walking toward him, like she was trying to make a connection. But then, the man who resembled Douglas stepped in and motioned for her to head to the beach bar. Carmichael said the woman kept looking back at him, then looking down, like she was trying to send a silent message. He and his friend later described Amy's tattoos perfectly, and even mentioned the watch her boyfriend had given her. After seeing her face on America's Most Wanted, Carmichael said, "I am haunted by that encounter with Amy. I know it was her." He even called Amy's father and flew out to Virginia to meet the family in person. The FBI followed up on his report, but again, they couldn't confirm the sighting. U.S. Navy Petty Officer William Hefner came forward with an even more chilling account. He claimed that in January 1999, he was at a brothel in Curacao when a woman approached him and said her name was Amy Bradley. According to Hefner, she was sitting at a table with another woman when she walked over to him and begged for help. She said she was being held against her will and wasn't allowed to leave. Hefner said she told him she'd been on a cruise with her brother, got off the ship to score some drugs, and ended up trapped with these guys. But he didn't report what happened, not right away. He was still active in the Navy at the time and didn't want to admit he'd been at a brothel. It wasn't until May 2002, after he retired and saw Amy's photo in a magazine, that he reached out to the Bradley family. "I have no doubt the woman I saw in the brothel was Amy Bradley," Hefner said. The FBI looked into it, but by then, the brothel had burned down. No evidence was ever found to back up the story. In the fall of 1999, Bradley's parents received an unexpected email from a man named Frank Jones, someone who claimed to be a former Navy SEAL. Frank told them he was a retired U.S. Army Special Forces officer with a highly trained team that could help bring Amy home. He said they had eyes on her, that Amy was being held by heavily armed Colombian guards in a compound surrounded by barbed wire. He even gave chillingly accurate details, like descriptions of Amy's tattoos and the lullaby her mom used to sing to her as a child. Over the next few months, Jones kept the Bradleys on edge, sending updates and reports, making them believe that a rescue mission was in the works. When he finally said the team was ready to act, he asked for more money to set things in motion. Desperate and hopeful, the Bradleys wired a total of $210,000 to fund the rescue effort. But the call they were waiting for, the one that said Amy was safe, never came. Turns out, Frank Jones was lying the entire time. He was a con artist running a scam. In February 2002, federal prosecutors in Richmond charged him with defrauding the Bradleys of $24,444 and the National Missing Children's Organization of $186,416. He pleaded guilty to mail fraud that April and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. In April 2003, a potential sighting of Bradley occurred in San Francisco, California. Several witnesses said they saw a woman who looked just like Amy, standing with two men, watching a street musician perform. According to the witnesses, they instantly recognized the woman as Amy. But once the two men noticed the attention, they quickly grabbed her and took off. The woman, they said, gave them a pleading look, as if she was silently asking for help as she was being led away. The FBI got involved and released composite sketches of the two men believed to be with her at the time. There was another potential sighting of Bradley in March 2005, this time in Bridgetown, Barbados. A woman named Judy Maurer claimed she saw someone matching Amy's description in a department store restroom. The woman entered with four men who were talking about what sounded like some sort of shady deal. At one point, Judy overheard the woman ask the men if they could stop and see the children. No one knows what children she was referring to. When the men stepped out, Judy came out of her stall and started a conversation with the woman. She said the woman quietly mentioned that she was from West Virginia and softly said her name was Amy. Maurer called the authorities, and composite sketches were drawn based on her account. Bradley's parents later appeared on the November 17, 2005 episode of Dr. Phil Asterisk. During the show, they shared a photo they'd received in an email, an image of a young woman who looked eerily similar to Amy. She looked scared, worn down, and was reportedly working as a sex worker under the name Jazz on an adult site. The picture had been discovered by someone who volunteers with a group that tries to identify victims of human trafficking. The FBI looked into it but couldn't confirm anything. Special Agent Aaron Sheridan explained, "We did follow that lead. The difficult part is back then, information such as that, or pictures such as that, you cannot tell when they're altered. Still, a man who worked with the FBI and specialized in facial recognition believed the woman in the photo really was Amy." Another twist came in 2010 when a human jawbone washed up on the shore of Aruba. At first, people suspected it might belong to Natalie Holloway, another young woman who vanished in the Caribbean. But after testing ruled out that theory, officials stopped there. Despite the fact that 9 other people had gone missing in the region, no further testing was done. The only thing authorities confirmed was that the jawbone was human and likely belonged to a Caucasian individual. Bradley was declared legally dead on March 24, 2010, exactly 12 years after she vanished. No witnesses, no body, and still, no answers. The FBI is currently offering a reward of up to $25,000 for any information that could potentially lead to the recovery of Bradley or leads to an arrest or conviction of the person or persons responsible for Bradley's disappearance. The family is awarding $250,000 for information leading to her safe return, and the family also has a reward of $50,000 for information leading to her current location. Bradley's case was featured on Unsolved Mysteries, America's Most Wanted, and the television show Disappeared. Her case was also the subject of episode 59 of the Case File podcast, and the podcasts Crime Junkie and The Casual Criminalist. Renewed attention was paid to her case after the disappearance of Natalie Holloway in 2005. On July 16, 2025, a 3-part documentary series titled Amy Bradley is Missing was released on Netflix. More than 2 decades have passed since Amy Lynn Bradley vanished, and yet Her story continues to haunt the waves she once sailed. A young woman full of life, ambition, and strength disappeared in the blink of an eye. Not in some dark alley or isolated forest, but from a crowded cruise ship surrounded by thousands of people. A place meant for celebration became the setting for every family's worst nightmare. What followed was a tragic saga of false hope, failed systems, and unthinkable cruelty. From con artists exploiting a grieving family's desperation to reported sightings of Amy in captivity, unable to escape, to the images that still linger in her parents' minds of a girl who may have been crying out for help in silence. With every sighting, every lead, and every year that slipped by, one thing became painfully clear. The world kept spinning, but Amy never came home. Her family has fought tirelessly, not just for justice, but for truth, for answers, for the chance to say, "We didn't forget you." And that's what makes Amy's story so powerful. Because it's not just about a missing person, it's about a sister, a daughter, a bright young woman who deserved more than vanishing headlines and bureaucratic delays. She deserved action. She deserved urgency. She deserved to be found. As we remember Amy Lynn Bradley, we remember the countless others whose stories remain unresolved. The stolen lives, the unanswered questions, the families still holding on to hope. If you know something, say something. Because silence in the face of this kind of pain only helps the darkness win. Amy may be gone, but her story and the fight for truth is far from over.